And just like that, we're back after another 2 fascinating Formula E races, but this time we have a new champion, one Antonio Felix da Costa. He didn't win either of the races, but he didn't need to. A 4th and 2nd place was more than enough to guarantee him the title. On this episode of Behind the Race, we'll analyse da Costa's efforts, as well as review the closest ever finish in Formula E history, plus the work of Team Orders and how they helped DS Cerruti to score a back-to-back Teams Championship. I'm your host, Matt Q, and once again, I'm joined by Michela Cerruti out in Italy. How are you doing?
I'm very well.
Good. You're doing better than me. I seem to have got a lot more scruffy since last video, whereas you're still looking quite fresh. So,
yes.
So good place to start.
Yes, I changed my location actually. Finally, I have to say. But yes, it's nice to have like all these motorsport while you go for holidays. You know, usually in August, everyone is on holiday also in motorsport, like motorbikes and cars. But this time we are lucky because we can still watch all our favorite races, even if we are on holidays.
Yeah, it was intense. Formula One, MotoGP at the weekend, as well as Formula E. So let's kick off. You might have changed location, but Formula E didn't. We're still at Tempelhof circuit, this time on the normal conventional route. And we kicked off with a different winner. It was da Costa in the first 2, but then this time around we had Maximilian Gunther for BMW Andretti. Jean-Luc Verne had qualified on pole, but once again we saw these energy management issues coming back. But this time it didn't really seem to be his fault. He said that when he activated his attack mode, he was over-consuming energy. He had a malfunctioning setting on his car, and that dropped him into the clutches of Gunther and then Robin Freins late on. What did you make of that race? Because Gunther's had a season where he's either finished first, second, or not scored any points at all, and that sort of inconsistency carried on, where he was suddenly right back at the top of the field.
Yeah, well, I think it was a very good sign for him to go back again on top there. Yes, you're right. I think he has been pretty inconsistent so far, and I think he needed to be there again. Even qualifying, you know, sometimes he's there, sometimes he's in the middle of the group, as we could see also like in these 2 races, one day after another, and the results for Gunther can be so different. But I think that once he will find a way to be always there on top and to find a bit of I don't know, probably to be more relaxed, it could be always there, because the car is good. Because if you can be there once, I don't think that the day after you can be so much in the back. So I think that he needs to find more mental strength. That, for example, we could see on da Costa, but it was not always like that also for him. So it's something that even if he's a very experienced driver, you need to build it up with the time and with the experience. But I think it was a very good race for him and for BMW. I mean, even if he couldn't really win it at the end.
Yeah. No, he's gone on a bit of it's a cliche, but he's gone on a bit of a journey this season. 2 race wins, and we understand that's earned him a new contract for next season, which will be probably announced after we finish in Berlin. And going back to what we said earlier, the closest race in Formula E history. Well, slightly, there's a technicality there. So Robin Freins got past Verne late on, and he was 0.128 seconds behind Gunther at the line. We have had a 0.1 second victory before in Mexico in 2017 when Jerome D'Ambrosio won over Sebastian Buemi, but that was only after Lucas Di Grassi was disqualified from the win. So let's not count that. And let's talk about how da Costa did in this race. You know, he'd got 2 pole positions, 2 wins coming into this race. And then overnight, we had a change in tyre pressures. They're down by 0.1 bar, which doesn't sound like a lot, but as a percentage, it stacked up. And they reckoned, DS Cerruti reckoned it had hurt da Costa more than most. And so he qualified only 8th. What were you expecting to see from him? Were you expecting him to just hold position and not make any progress and just try and hold on to that points advantage?
Well, I think that anyway, he had that kind of superiority that allowed him to overtake the cars in front. The reason why he was only P9 in qualifying was because of a mistake in turn 6 during his quali lap, so he couldn't fight for super pole, which was very strange to see after the last Berlin races. But anyway, with this kind of city tracks and with this kind of cars so heavy and electric, so with this power management, which is not very easy all the time, it's also very easy to make mistakes. So once that you make a little mistake in a corner, you easily lose 3-4 tenths. And even more, like we could see. But in his position, he had really nothing to lose. He knew that he could also stay there in the back without fighting and winning the title anyway. So I think that he didn't take too many risks during the race. He was overtaking when he was very sure that he could do it. He was very self-confident, but I mean, who couldn't be in his position. It was anyway the best way to finish for him. And it was also nice to see this relaxed atmosphere also with Vern at the end of the race, with this great result for all the team. We know that there was a little bit of tension between the two drivers in the past races, so I think it was a success for everyone. And Vern was champion before, but he also has that kind of relaxed feeling of being already a champion. So that was the time of Da Costa. He completely deserved this success.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that Vern is a reigning champion, because when he moved to DS Techeetah, he was sort of seen as more than a driver. He was the one that went to Andre Lotterer 3 seasons ago now and asked him to join the team. And then when Andre Lotterer left for Porsche, it was again Vern who was asked to go and get Da Costa to sign. So he's, as a driver, he's playing a big role in that team, almost like a management or sort of organisational role. And yet he's had to watch his new teammate come in now and sort of wipe the floor with him, to put it sort of strongly. I mean, Vern, defending the title, only one win, and it took until the final race, or the most recent race, I should say. There's still 2 races to go. So let's discuss that, because as you rightly pointed out, Michela, we have seen some flares in the past between the teammates, and that happened in race 1 at Berlin, where Vern felt pretty angry that Da Costa had ignored some team radio instructions to sort of manage the pace and slow down. Well, they were back on team radio this time, but it was for all the right reasons. It was well organised, because twice they swapped positions. There was team orders came over the radio, which allowed Vern to lead, Da Costa to go back in front, and then Vern to lead again. What do you make of that? Because you can understand it from a team's point of view, but as a racing fan, are you wanting just to see 2 drivers go out and attack without the team interfering?
Well, of course, I think this is the thing that most of the fans want to see, but I think it's also normal in this kind of situations, in this top level championship, to see situations like that, to see team orders. In this case, and overall, when you look at Formula E, there is a part of management that you do not have in other championships, which is fundamental. If you use too much energy, if you push too much, then you risk that all the competitors comes and overtake you. So I think it was pretty clever from the team to do this kind of move. The drivers were both in a mental condition that probably was not a problem for them to play this game. As you said, I think Vern is a real additional value for a team, because with all his experience in many championships and in Formula One overall, he's really a team guy, team player. He's not afraid of choosing or suggesting a teammate which can be even stronger than him, because you really think also about the good sides that can come for the team that he's racing for. And this is what he showed. It's true that once that there was someone not respecting team orders, that was Da Costa, never Vern. And this last race, I think he deserved this last victory. And he was sincerely happy for his teammate. So I think that was not that bad to see this team game. Techeetah has a clear advantage compared to the others in these last races. He wanted to secure the team title. And as a driver, you are always happy to contribute to the success of your team, because it's a victory for everyone. So in this case, Verne didn't win the title, but there is a title that the team won even with his help. So he won a title at the end, kind of. I mean, not like the driver title, but it's anyway a success that you're part of.
Absolutely. And we should explain that the reason they did these team audits is because for once in a race, they had a proper, genuine threat. And that came from both Nissan cars, Oliver Rowland and Sebastian Buemi. And they sort of played copycat because after DS Techeetah did it, Nissan got on team radio and told their drivers to swap around. And that's because Buemi had built up an energy advantage and was sort of in a position to go and chase after them. But unfortunately, he sort of messed up his overtake going past Oliver Rowland, ran wide, which not only meant Oliver Rowland lost a position to Mercedes' Nick de Vries on the final lap, but also meant Buemi just fell back a bit and didn't give the challenge that we sort of not necessarily were expecting, because DS Techeetah had been so far ahead, but what we're really hoping for, that this is a team that can be beaten. But it was good to see Nissan back up there because they've had a quiet first half of the season.
Yes, they were very aggressive. That's why also Nick de Vries at the end of the race, he had information from the garage that Roland couldn't finish the race like that because he was fighting much more. Probably for the DS Techeetah cars, it was easier to be in front. And with this team game, they didn't push that much and they could have both drivers with the best state of battery charging and energy management. That was not the case of Roland and Buemi, that were really visibly pushing much more. But I think that the reason why even the other competitors were stronger this time is that the track was again the track that they were using last year. So maybe it was more difficult to see that big gap between Techeetah and the competitors, because all the team, they had data from the past. There were many drivers already knowing the racetrack, so that can make the difference in this case, because it's clear that Techeetah found something more. But as we said last time, the teams and the other teams, they had the chance to work better on the old telemetry and data and so on, and the drivers could find back the confidence on a track that they already knew.
Yeah, there was a great line from Oliver Rowland in a press conference when he said, "I could have overtaken them at any point except when I was asked to." I feel like that's the best excuse, isn't it?
Yes.
I could have got a great result in all of my exams, but I just didn't want to. I didn't want to. But anyway, let's not get distracted by that, because of course we do have a new Formula E champion, and it's an easy thing to say, I suppose, but I think pretty much everyone's supportive of that. Such a nice guy. It always sort of tugs at your heartstrings when you see someone crying and celebrating, but that's because it meant so much to him. Because when he first joined Formula E, he was in a really bad car in the early Aguri, and this came after he was overlooked at Red Bull in 2013 for a Formula One drive. They went with Daniel Kvyat instead, and since then he sort of had to reinvent himself. I was writing a piece for Autosport, and I described his career as best sort of summed up as nearly won this title, nearly won that, nearly got into F1, but now it's his time.
So I really like Da Costa. I had the luck to meet him a few times when we were both racing in the BMW Motorsport environment, and he's such a loyal driver also. So I think that it was not easy at all to leave BMW for him and to make such a big step, a step in the dark, even if he knew that the Techeetah car was a winning car. But he's a really emotional guy and is completely deserved, because as you said, that nearly puts on a driver so much pressure. It's very hard. We could see it also for Hülkenberg, that he came back in F1 now, that was nearly at the podium so many times, and he couldn't be on the podium ever so far, because once that it gets there nearly, as you said, it's really harder and harder to reach that goal, because the pressure on you is so strong. So I understand his tears. As a woman, I like them so much. But I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see. well deserved as well. It's worth saying that Formula E has sort of made its name by title races going down to the wire. We've had battles for fastest lap points to decide championships. And then here comes along Da Costa, first season at a new team, and he does what no one else has done, and he takes the title with 2 races to spare. So let's wind up by having a quick look at those 2 races. We're going on a circuit we've not seen before, an extended version of the Tempelhof track. From what you've seen, whether it's maybe Gunther or Nissan's in race 4, can anyone get close to DS Techeetah?
You mean in the next races?
Yeah.
Well, I think that the good side now is that the big titles, the titles that count, they are already taken. So drivers has absolutely nothing to lose. Of course, you can fight for P2 or P3, P4 in the championship, but we all know that drivers doesn't really care of being P2 once that they cannot be P1. So I think that we could see very funny races and full of action, and everyone will be anyway more relaxed because it's like that the game is over from a certain point of view, but now it's really time to have fun. And when the drivers race without that kind of big pressure, that's really the time that you see good races. So I cannot say if the drivers will be closer, the other drivers will be that close to Techeetah. But we could see it even in this second last race that this happened. I mean, one mistake is enough. We could see safety car mistakes during the attack mode procedure. Everything can happen. And I think that someone like Gunther or Roland, Buemi, De Vries, even De Vries was always there close to the podium, and there are many drivers who want to show what they can do.
Excellent. Well, yeah, like you say, De Vries has been really strong, but so maybe in a couple of days' time when we come back to record the next episode, we'll be talking about those drivers as well as Da Costa, as well as Verne. Keep it fresh, keep it a bit different. And
yes, of course. There were also, I mean, you see Lotterer, Rast. There is like the second meet of the field, which couldn't really be there because if you miss qualifying, it's really difficult to climb up the field. But we could see René Rast gaining many positions. We could see finally Felipe Massa on top in qualifying, who couldn't really then manage to have a great result in the race. We could see also Di Grassi, Lotterer, a great fighter, doing a bit of mess inside the field. So I think that thanks to these guys, we will have a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to reviewing it with you in a few days' time. Thank you very much, Michela.
Thank you, Matt.